And so what I did was I developed this four-step process that I use with almost all my clients. First of all, I'm trying to help them find out what is behind what is happening at the moment. What kind of things are happened or didn't happen in your past that contribute to the law and create long-term effects that you're now having that you don't want. And so that's kind of the first thing. I don't try to do cognitive behavioral therapy with my clients. I might try some later after they've understood where this all came from. We can still use some cognitive behavioral tools to help you put that all together. So the first step is when I meet a client, I usually give them a series of self-assessment tools. Particularly based on the first interview with them, I find what they're saying. I kind of say, "Oh, I think this tool might work. This tool might work." But I tell them, I said, "I'm going to give you these to fill out and return to me, and we're going to rule things in and rule things out. Some things don't seem to apply, but other things might, and we'll find out specifically what applies in your case by doing these self-assessment tools, taking these and filling them out." So then I get them back and look at the scoring on them, and they're all on a 4-point scale. One means hardly ever do I experience this issue. Two is, well, sometimes I do. And three is, well, this is usually here. And four is, it's there all the time or most of the time. So anything that they marked on their inventory as a 3 or 4, we work on specifically. We take each item where they marked a 3 or 4, and we go through this 4-step process. And I think some of these self-inventories, they're in the book, but I think some of them were also in the file that is available to you to download. And so look for some of the self-inventories and self-assessment tools that we have put up here in the previous podcasts that are available to you to download and use this process on yourself. Uh, so I'll take an item that they maybe marked a 3 or a 4, and I'll read it and I'll say, now, how is that affecting your life today? Tell me more about why this is an important item in your life and how it's affecting you in a negative way that you might want to change. So I get some motivational buy-in at that point with them saying that, okay, yeah, this is not working very well for me. I'd like to change this. Then the next question I ask is, okay, uh, we spend a little time understanding why they see this as not helping them. So we get some of the dimensions of that in their life. They have poor relationships. They have poor job performance. They're depressed, or they're anxious, or whatever it might be that's causing them to. And this item seems to tap into that. Then I say, okay, now we've got to do a little digging and doing some connecting the dots. When do you think this item showed up in your life for the first time? Where did you begin to do this that you now are doing and you don't want to do anymore? And in the process of helping them determine that, sometimes people know right away, but other times I have no idea where this might have come from. So then I say to them, okay, think about how you're feeling with this item. What feelings does it bring up in you? And someone will say like fear or anxiousness or sadness sometimes, or anger even sometimes. And then I say, okay, well, where do you feel that in your body? Close your eyes and see if you can locate it in your body. And most of the time they'll say it's up in here or down in my gut. It's in the core where they feel it the most. And I said, well, really anchor a feeling, touch with that feeling, and make sure you can feel that feeling right now. And then when they tell me they can, I said, okay, now open your eyes. And now I want you to keep that feeling in mind and be in touch with it very, very directly. And close your eyes and tell me the first time you ever felt that way. You'd think that would not yield much. sometimes within 2 seconds, they'll tell me. I was 3 years old, and this is what was happening. And I was feeling the same way now as I am now. So it's not too hard sometimes to get people to access the memory of that kind of situation that where they has left something unfinished. That's the third question then on the four-step model is, so what do you think was unfinished about that keeps that showing up in your life? What might have happened differently if certain other things had happened during that time? And usually the unfinished part of it is that they didn't have a voice in whatever was going on. That's the number one. Or they didn't. There was no way they could do anything that would change the situation. And then the other side of it is that they probably needed something from somebody else, like comfort, and they didn't get it. Or they needed some reassurance, some reassuring words, or some supportive, compassionate words from somebody that was involved with this unfinished incident, and they didn't get it. So then we say, okay, these are the unfinished pieces that keep this memory alive in your life and keeps interfering with your life. So let's see what we can do right now to change or basically finish whatever didn't get finished in that earlier incident or earlier incidents. It often is a series of incidents. I mean, people will say things like, "Well, I have a couple of clients right now who grew up with strong religious families, and they say it was the uh, insistence my parents had that I live by the rules of the church, and I had no say in that. I had to just go along with it, or I would be punished." So there's an example of somebody who didn't have a voice, and so we now look at, okay, now where in your present life do you not have a voice? And then we look at that and we said, okay, now what can you do to regain your voice in that situation? I had one client who, when he was in when he gets in social situations, he loses his voice entirely, and he traced it all the way back to about age 3. And so we looked at how he could change that so that he could begin to develop a voice in those situations. And that's where we use some cognitive behavioral therapy to help him with practicing uh, using a voice in certain social situations. And that was hard for him at first, but he found some social situations, and I coached him on, okay, well, uh, sitting there and doing nothing is probably making you more anxious. So initiate something in the conversation with people where you typically get anxious. What could you do to kind of start a conversation, which will typically lower your anxiety? So I'll say to them, ask the other person questions. What'd you do this weekend? How how did things go with so and so? And just whatever questions you can ask them, and the goal of that is to mobilize yourself, because when you have no voice, you're feeling immobile. And that was in fact, the work the when it went to I asked him about the feelings he had. He said, in those situations, I feel helpless and hopeless. He felt immobilized. He couldn't do anything to change it. And so just getting somebody to actively do something when they feel immobilized is often a good start to get them back to where they want to be. So using their voice in these situations, I also say, it's Newcomb's ABX communication theory. When A meets B, they try to find X in common. So your question should be geared to trying to find something in common with this other person. And once you have something in common with them, you find something in common, then you can talk about that freely. And so there are specific ways you can regain your voice in those situations. And so you can't really uh, say, well, I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to do. I coach them on what might be useful. And that's also in the book about how to do that. So that's a kind of a, and the idea behind that is that when you were 10 or whenever, and this happened to you, you didn't have much power to change it. You just had to go along with whatever was happening and feel whatever you felt at the time. And so it means that now you have many more resources than you had then, and there's many things you can do to change the way you respond in social situations. For example, using the same example of somebody who's socially anxious, and that's a very common one I deal with. Is people say to me, my clients, is, when I get in social situations, I get really anxious. I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing, or afraid that people will misunderstand me, or so. In some ways, it's a good place to start. Uh, and then I also look at, okay, you didn't get comfort when you needed it. So what can you do now to ask for comfort when you need it? Ask for a hug, or even some encouraging words or some supporting words. Ask the other person about, I'm feeling kind of down on myself today. Uh, Tell me a couple of things that you like about me. It might help me cheer me up. And so I really focus on the here and now and what the person can do to change whatever they want to change in their life. And we do each item the same way with this 4-step model. And it really does give people a sense of the fact that um, they're they're in charge. They're in charge of how to heal themselves and